Recording first. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for participating in this session. Okay, before we start, I would like to introduce our speaker, Dr. Said Mustafa Rasul Manish, Associate Professor and Head of Research for Faculty of Social Sciences and Leisure Management. Okay, about our speaker, he is an Associate Professor and Director of Center for Research and Innovation in Tourism, and Head of Research for the Faculty of Social Sciences and Leisure Management in Talis University. His research interest areas contain sustainable tourism, heritage tourism, community participation, residents' perception, and urban sustainability. Moreover, he has used advanced quantitative analysis, such as spatial least square structural equation modeling in most of his papers. He has published more than 120 articles in different journals, including high-impact journals such as Tourism Management, Journal of Travel Research, Journal of Sustainable Tourism, International Journal of Contemporary Hospitality Management, Journal of Clean Production, International Journal of Tourism Research, City and Habitat International, among others. Dr. Mustafa is an editorial board member of more 20 reputed tourism and hospitality journals. Without further ado, I would like to invite our speaker, Dr. Said Mustafa.
Thank you, Shahrin. Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here and discuss about partial least squared structural equation modeling. But today's session, we will continue until 11:30. So 11:30, I have to go for another meeting. I will try to go fast through the concept of mediator and moderator for using PLS, and then I will try to finish earlier so we can spend more time for Q&A. Before starting, as usual, let me give you some Shahrin, I cannot share. You have to give me.
Can you share now?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. So first, the topic of today is mediation and moderation analysis. Last year, 2021, we published two papers on the assessment of moderation and assessment of mediation. And these two papers, mediation paper was published in Journal of Hospitality and Tourism Management, and moderation paper was published in International Journal of Contemporary Hospitality Management. So I strongly recommend you, if you want to know about mediation and moderation, read these two papers. Of course, there are many other papers focused on mediation and moderation, and you can read those papers in my slide. I will refer to some of those papers, but these two papers, all papers, so can be useful if you want to assess mediation and moderation. Especially in these two papers, we try to review literature related to mediation and moderation analysis, and we try to be comprehensive and cover different aspects of mediation and moderation analysis, from hypothesis development. Later I will explain hypothesis development is important stage for mediation analysis. These two papers, as usual, this is my YouTube channel, and in YouTube channel you can find several videos, especially a few videos related to mediation and moderation analysis using the smart PLS, mediation and moderation analysis using VAR PLS software, and Also in quantitative research method videos series, I have a few videos related to mediation and moderation analysis. So you can watch those videos that I discuss in detail, mediation and moderation analysis. I will upload today's session also in my YouTube channel. This is a video from last research skill seminar, mixed method. I talk about mixed method. So today video also will be available in my YouTube channel. Okay. So this is some resources that you can refer. Okay. Let's go to anytime you have question, you can stop me, you can raise your hand or open your mic and stop me and ask your question. You don't need to wait until end of my presentation and explanation. Okay. You can see my slide, right? In presentation mode. Yes.
Yes, Prof, we can see it.
Okay. First, let's start with mediation analysis. What's mediation? What's a mediator? When we have a variable between two other variables, and it means IV influence over this intervening variable, and this intervening variable influence dV. So it means the effect of IV to dV goes through this middle or intervening variable. So we can call this variable mediator, but it's not for all situations. Later we will see how a variable between two other variables or an intervening variable can be mediator. It's not for all situations. So this is the concept of mediator. Mediator actually explains the mechanism of effect of IV to on dV. Sometimes we have a complex situation and IV doesn't affect directly on dV, or effect of IV on dV is not the mechanism is not clear, so we don't know how this IV can influence this dV. So in this situation, we introduce mediator. Here, you saw, I'm sure, a lot of studies that use mediator. For example, this is one of our paper. I will be back to this paper later, but just to show you, for example, here it's a very, very famous concept that we have, especially in tourism, when we are working on resident perception and attitude. Here we have a few variables like community attachment or environmental attitude, cultural attitude. These variables, these antecedents, lead to support for tourism development. So it means if we have high level of community attachment, this will lead to high level of support for tourism development. Or if we have high level of environmental attitude, this will lead to high level of support for tourism development. But sometimes direct relationship is not very clear, and we need to know how this effect happens, how community attachment influence support for tourism development. So we introduce resident perceptions toward tourism development. So it means if community attachment is high, so this will create high level of resident perception toward tourism development. And this high level of resident perception will lead to support for tourism development, right? So based on this, here, resident perception is mediator. We can understand the mechanism of effect of community attachment on support for tourism development. Means community attachment cause high level of or positive perception in toward tourism development among the residents, and this cause support when they have positive perception. When residents have positive perception, this lead to support for tourism development. This is the meaning of mediator. I'm sure you can find a lot of example for this, and you can see many psychological factor, many social construct that transmit effect of IV to DV, right? So in this case, we call this middle variable, intermediate variable as mediator. So based on mediator, we can explain the process of effect of IV on DV. So this is meaning of mediator. Sometimes we confuse about meaning of mediator and moderator. Mediator and moderator have two totally different meaning, and they are two different concepts. Mediation or mediator actually is between two variables, between IV and DV. But later we will see moderator concept is different, and moderator concept is not between two variables. Moderator concept influence effect of IV to DV. So change effect of IV to DV for different level of moderator. But mediator is a variable that come between IV and DV. So IV influence the mediator, and then mediator cause dependent variable. So we need to understand this concept. So this is concept of mediator. So when we have causal relationship between the two variables, sometimes the effect of IV to DV is not cannot be explained directly and is not clear. So in this complex situation, we need to identify the mechanism, and to identify the mechanism, we can introduce mediator for the effect of IV to DV. So we call this relationship mediation relationship or effect. As I introduced at the beginning, this is the paper that you can refer to understand the concept of mediation from hypothesis development. When we develop mediator, two parts are very important. I saw a lot of papers when I review for some journal, when I actually invited to review paper for some journal, even some top tier journal. When I actually go through those manuscripts submitted to journal, many times I observe this issue that in the paper, they assess mediator, but without hypothesizing mediator. So in analysis part, they did the analysis for mediator, but they didn't hypothesize mediator in literature review and at the beginning. This is one issue that I observed many times when actually I review papers for journals. Another thing, when I review manuscript, they hypothesize mediator, but they didn't provide any support from theory for a mediation hypothesis. This is another common issue for mediation hypothesis. Okay, before explaining this mediation hypothesis, I want to highlight one very important things when we are working and when our research is quantitative research, when we are working with quantitative approach. In quantitative research, when we develop hypotheses, addition to literature review, we have to have theory to support our hypothesis. I'm not going through explaining the meaning of theory and theoretical framework. Theoretical framework is different with conceptual framework. I will have a session. Okay, it's good to know. We will have a postgraduate research colloquium in FSLM, Faculty of Social Science and Leisure Management, in 5th and 6th of November, 5-6 November. And I will have a workshop or session on theoretical framework and conceptual framework. So if you are interested to know about this, you can register for PGRC and also attend this workshop. There are a few more workshops as well. Theoretical framework is actually include the theory or theories that support our research. For example, I apply theory of land behavior and combine with social exchange theory. So by combining these two theories, I create my theoretical framework. So theoretical framework includes theory or theories that I apply to conceptualize my research. But conceptual framework and hypotheses that actually form conceptual framework come from my research. So when I have a few hypotheses, all hypotheses together create my conceptual model and conceptual framework. So conceptual framework is not theoretical framework, should be supported by theoretical framework and should be supported by theory. So when we develop hypotheses, for each hypothesis, we need to have support from theoretical framework or theory and literature review and previous studies. So literature review is not theoretical framework, is not theory, right? So you need to have these two support for each hypothesis. You need to have support from theory and support from previous study and literature for your hypothesis. This is this is the same for mediation hypothesis. For mediation hypothesis, you need to have support from theory. But theoretical support for mediation hypothesis is a bit different with the direct relationship. For direct relationship, so you apply social exchange theory, so you can justify effect of resident perception on support for tourism development, right? So you have apply theory of land behavior, or you apply UTAT for technology adoption. So you can support effect of your antecedent, for example, for TPB, effect of attitude on behavioral intention, right? But for mediation hypothesis, situation is a bit complicated compared to direct hypothesis. For mediation hypothesis, we explain these two different approaches in our paper. Actually, these two approaches are not from us. is actually these two are introduced in the literature, but we try to clarify these two approaches for hypothesizing mediator in our paper. We have two, we can follow these two approaches for hypothesis development for mediator. One is segmentation approach. For segmentation approach, we need to apply one or most of times more than one theory to support different segments for our mediator. For example, we have the effect of X on effect of IV on mediator and effect of mediator on DD. So we have these two segments. If we follow this segmentation approach, we need to have support. We need to have support for the effect of the X on M and effect of M on Y. So if we have theoretical support for the effect of X on M and mediator on dependent variable, we can justify mediation hypothesis based on this segmentation approach. For example, in this paper, we apply for this model for mediation role of resident perception. For the effect of community attachment on resident perception and the effect of resident perception on support for tourism development, we apply two different theories for the effect of IV on mediator and the effect of mediator on DV. Here we explain, we apply social exchange theory and Weber theory of substantive and formal rationality. So by application of this theory, we hypothesize mediation role of resident perception. Weber theories support effect of community attachment, environmental attitude, and other antecedents on resident perception, and the effect of resident perception on support for tourism development is supported by social exchange theory. So by application of these two theory for these two segments, IV on M mediator and mediator on DV, we can support mediation role of resident perception. So we can say community attachment, effect of community attachment on support for tourism development is mediated by resident perception, or resident perception mediates the effect of community attachment on support for tourism development. But justification for this mediation comes from segmentation approach. So this effect is supported by Weber theory, and this effect, resident perception on support, is supported by social exchange theory. This is one approach that we can support the mediation. Another approach is transmittal approach. Transmittal approach is for mediation hypothesis when we have a three-layer theory. When we have the three-layer theory to support mediation. For example, we have a lot of theories that there are three layers. For example, cognitive, affective, cognitive theory, right? So, or attitude, value, attitude, behavior theory, right? Value, attitude, behavior theory show that value influence attitude and attitude influence behavior, right? So we have three layers. So if we use this theory to support effect of value, sustainable value on attitude toward environmental protection, on behavior or behavioral intention or behavior to stay in green hotel. So if we have these three layers and attitude is a variable between values and behavior, so mediation role of attitude can be supported or mediation hypothesis here can be supported based on this value attitude behavior theory. If we have this type of theory, this sequential theory, we call it sequential theory, right? We have sequence, value influence attitude, attitude influence behavior. If we have this sequential theory, so we can support mediation role of the attitude between values and behavior using this transmittal approach. So we can apply these two different approaches to support mediation hypothesis, right? We don't need to have exactly previous study that examine mediation for their study to support mediation hypothesis. If we have one of these support from one of these approach, we can hypothesize mediate. This is very important for mediation hypothesis development, right? And you need to make sure that one of this approach, one of this theoretical approach can support your mediation hypothesis. Okay, as I mentioned in this paper, you can see we apply this segmentational approach, and there are many papers that you can see they apply transmittal approach and use sequential theories. So this is for hypothesis development. For assessment of mediator, we can have different types of mediator, simple mediator or multiple mediation. Simple mediation is for situation that you have only one mediator. So the effect of X to Y divided to two different effects. One is mediation effect after you hypothesize. So don't forget to hypothesize your mediation and provide theoretical support for your mediation hypothesis. So when you hypothesize, when you include the one mediator in your framework, so effect of X to Y is transmitted through two different ways, two different paths. One is so in this actually the model, you can see effect of X transfer to Y only through this path. So we call this total effect. But this total effect can be divided to two different paths: indirect and direct effect. Indirect and direct effect. So indirect effect is AB, right? Is A multiply B. So these two effects together plus C prime. So we have these two effects that two paths or two coefficients that transfer effect of X to Y. We can write the mathematical explanation of this, and we can actually calculate this formula. We can create this formula for this effect, but I'm not going to go through this effect. So we call this AB as indirect effect and C prime as direct effect of X on Y. If we have multiple mediation, here, for example, in this figure, we have parallel mediation. So effect of X on Y, total effect of X on Y A part of this effect is transferred through M, part of this effect is transferred through W. So we have A1B1 plus C prime plus A2B2. So part of effect is A2B2, part of effect is A1B1, plus this direct effect that all create the total effect together. Here we have serial mediator, and it means effect of X to Y go through a few direct and indirect effects, right? So here you can see A1, A3, B2. This is one pad that transfer effect of X to Y. Another one is A1, B1. Another one is A2, B2, and C prime. So all these effects together create total effect. So we have a few simple and multiple mediation pad to represent total effect of X on Y. So we have a different situation for assessment of mediator, and we can have simple or multiple mediation. For assessment of mediator, we have different approaches. McKinnon introduced at least 14 tests for assessment of mediator, and categorized these 14 tests in 3 groups. First group is the causal step, that the common approach under this group is Baron and Kenny approach. You may hear about this Baron and Kenny approach. It's very famous, and until recent years, actually, most of researchers use this Baron and Kenny approach under these causal steps category. Another one is the differences in direct coefficient, and another one, third group, is product of coefficient or indirect effect. Product of coefficient is A1, B1, right, or A multiply B. So we calculate significance of this indirect effect, AB, and if this is significant, we can conclude that mediation is significant, and we can support mediation hypothesis. This is third approach, third category of different approaches to test mediation. Recent for causal steps, actually the traditional one, Baron and Kenny, we needed to assess direct effect. So if effect of X to Y is significant, means total effect is significant, so it means we can go for assessment of mediator. Without this, we cannot go. But and also effect of X on M, effect of M on Y should be significant. Then based on direct effect, we can conclude that this mediation is partial mediation or fully mediator, right? So we can call partial or fully mediation. But this approach is no longer acceptable approach. This approach actually has very low statistical power. So we cannot actually use this Baron and Kenny approach anymore. And if you apply this Baron and Kenny, examiner, reviewer will reject your work, because recent studies show very low power of this Baron and Kenny approach. The best approach for assessment of mediator is the product of coefficient, means assessment of significance of AB, effect of X on M and M on Y. So this is the best approach for assessment of mediator. But for this one also, we have different approaches to check to test the significance of this product, significance of AB. For this significance of AB or indirect effect, we have several tests like delta method. One of the famous ones, Sobel test under delta method, bootstrapping approach, distribution of product, Monte Carlo confidence interval, and joint significance. So these are different approaches to test significance of product of coefficient or significance of indirect. Based on this study, Hayes and Sharkov, they show that this Sobel test or delta method actually also has very low power. So they don't recommend under category of product of coefficient. They don't recommend to use this approach for testing mediator. So they recommended the bias corrected bootstrap or percentile bootstrap as the best approach to test mediation hypothesis or indirect effect. And here is the Sobel test and other similar tests under first category delta method. Under delta method. So all these category actually has low power. There is another common mistake. Sometimes a student researcher try to combine two low power approach and think combining two low power approach can increase power of analysis. They apply Baron and Kenny and try to test the mediator using Baron and Kenny and also Sobel test, for example. But combining two low power approach cannot create high power, right? So avoid to use this approach for testing mediator. Baron and Kenny is not acceptable anymore. Also Sobel test and the other related tests under delta method has very low power based on this study. So the best approach for assessment of mediator is using bootstrapping, right? That in PLS actually we use bootstrapping. If you don't want to use PLS, also you can use SPSS macro or actually the package that developed by Hayes that can be linked to SPSS, and you can assess mediator using this package. But PLS is much easier, and under PLS you can assess any mediation with the different level of complexity under using PLS-SEM and the different software, the Smart PLS of RPL. This is Zhao's work, Zhao et al. 2010. So this diagram is very good diagram for assessment of mediator. In their work, also we repeated this one in our paper, so you can refer to original one by Zhao et al. Or you can refer to our paper. Here they introduce complementary and competitive mediation. There is no partial, and when you go for indirect effect and product of coefficient, there is no partial and full mediation. But you can have and you can interpret complementary and competitive approach. Okay, what's the meaning of complementary or competitive approach? If you have, let me go back to this simple figure. Okay, if you have A and B here and cyprin, when you test the significance of AB, so this is first step and the most important step. If AB and indirect effect is significant, if AB, right? AB, this effect and this effect is significant, means this p-value is lower than 0.05, or CI doesn't, confidence interval doesn't include 0. So we can conclude that this M is mediator between X and Y. So here is significant mediator, but depends on supreme value of supreme, significance of supreme, and the sign of A, B, and supreme. We can conclude different. We can have different situation based on ZOO. If supreme is not significant, okay, AB is significant, but supreme is not significant, it means all effect of X on Y transferred through indirect effect, transferred through mediation to effect of X transferred through mediation to Y. So it shows that mediation is very powerful and important, because all effect of X on Y should transfer or is transferred through M, and the direct effect is not significant. One point, for testing mediation, always you need to have this direct effect, even if you didn't hypothesize this direct effect, right? For testing indirect effect. So if this A and AB indirect effect is significant, but supreme is not, means all effect transfer through mediator to Y. If both are significant, A, B, and supreme, and A, B, and supreme indirect effect and direct effect has same sign, both are positive or both are negative, we call this mediator complementary. So indirect effect and direct effect complement each other. But based on size, we can see which one is more important. If effect of if indirect effect, for example, is 0.5, but direct effect is 0.2, but still both are significant, means most of effect go through indirect effect to Y. So mediator is more important compared to direct effect. Indirect effect is more important compared to direct. But if they have different sign, one is positive, another one is negative, right? Or AB is negative, supreme is positive. So they have different sign. So means AB supreme is negative, right? One is positive, one is negative. In this situation, we call mediation competitive. So mediation and direct effect compete to transfer the effect. One is positive and another one is negative. So if we go back to this ZOO, here we can see here is only indirect effect and mediation. If this A multiply B multiply C supreme is positive, so it means they are complementary, but if it's negative, is competitive. Okay. So this is good for interpretation of mediator and writing your discussion, because when you write your discussion, you need to be mindful of indirect effect and how indirect effect transfer to how effect of X transfer to Y through indirect or through mediation and also from direct path. So you need to be mindful of this, and this is very good in interpretation stage. When you know, you can compare this effect and you can discuss importance of mediation in your study. Okay, so this is for mediation. Any question?
I have a question, sir.
Yes.
Earlier when you were talking about the simple mediation and multiple mediation, the
Yes.
resident's perception, it's simple mediation, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let me show also mediation analysis in software. This is now you can see my software. You can see a smart PLS software, right? Or
Not
no?
yet, doctor. We still see the moderation slide.
Let's see. What about now? I think now you can see.
Yes, we can see now.
Okay. This is a model that we use in previous workshop that we talk about PLS-SEM. So we have here community attachment, environmental attitude, and economic gain to support. Let me create one. Let me create resident perception as well. So okay, new variable and only economic perception. So rename positive perception. Okay. Okay, just connect one variable just to test Mediator. Here we have positive positive perception. We justify and support the mediation hypothesis by two theories. So we have the mediation hypothesis for positive perception. Positive perception mediates relationship between community attachment and support for tourism development. Now we want to test this. We want to test mediation role of positive perception. So we have to run analysis and I don't explain, but of course, you know, when we analyze mediator, we have to assess measurement model before going to a structural model, because mediation analysis is part of a structural model assessment. And for a structural model, you have to test reliability, validity, convergent validity, and discriminant validity based on nature of your construct. But when we go to a structural model level, we have to report R square, Q square, and we need to report the effect of the result for testing all hypotheses, including mediation. So for mediation hypothesis, here we have now the result, right? But because we need to test indirect significance of indirect effect, when we run PLS algorithm, we don't have and we don't test the significance of any relationship. To test significance, we have to run bootstrapping, right? When we run bootstrapping, here is 500, but for your final work, you need to set to 5,000 bootstrapping, 5,000 free samples. But here I put 500 to have the result faster, because if I put 5,000, will take long. And here you can see, you can set confidence interval. The best approach for assessment of mediator is bias corrected the bootstrap. Also, we can set in percentile, but the best one is bias corrected. Two tail and one tail depends on your hypothesis. If your hypothesis is positive relationship, For example, IV, your IV on DV, community attachment here in this model. Community attachment has positive indirect effect on support for tourism development. So you have one tail hypothesis. Here you need to change to one tail. And start calculation. Okay. When we run bootstrapping, here you can see the result of for all hypotheses for path coefficient and total effect, significance of outer loading, outer weight. Here we want to see effect of significance of indirect effect, right? We have total indirect effect and specific indirect effect. Total indirect effect for some situation that we have parallel or we have parallel mediator between IV and DV. We have a few mediator or complex mediator. We have a few different paths through IV and DV. I will show you. But for this one, for this model, we have only one path, one indirect effect, right? One indirect effect of community attachment to positive perception and positive perception to support. Only this indirect path. So doesn't matter you select specific indirect effect or total indirect effect. Okay. Here for indirect effect, okay, effect of community attachment support for tourism, right? So this effect, the value of this indirect effect is 0.108, but to assess significance, the best approach is confidence interval bias corrected, right? If we click on confidence interval bias corrected, the value is 0.108. Lower level of confidence interval is 0.062. Higher level is 0.151. So between lower level and upper level, we should not have zero. If we don't have zero between the value of lower level of CI and higher level or upper level of CI, so we can conclude this mediation is significant. If we click on specific indirect effect, so you can see exactly same result, right? Because the only indirect effect between community attachment and support for tourism is this indirect effect that we have. So total indirect effect and a specific indirect effect is same. So you can conclude that positive perception mediates relationship between community attachment and support using bootstrapping approach and confidence interval. So you have to report confidence interval for this relationship. But let's make it a bit complex. Let's create another variable here. Add one more variable here, and this variable is positive social perception. And okay. So rename positive social perception. And link community attachment to positive social perception and to support, right? So here, for the effect of the community attachment to support for tourism development, we have three paths, right? One is the direct effect. Let me change this one to make it. Right? So we have one direct effect, one indirect effect through positive economic perception, positive economic perception. One is the true positive social perception, right? So now we have the parallel mediators. So we have two mediators that are parallel for the effect of community attachment on support for tourism development. So when we run analysis and bootstrapping, right, keep same setting. Okay. Now we want to test, we want to see mediator is significant or not, right? Okay, if we click on total effect, between community attachment and support for tourism, we can see only one value, right? 0.138. And if we go to confidence interval, yes, this is significant because lower level is 0.09, upper level is 0.18. But we have two mediation path here, right? We have two mediation path here. One is for positive economic perception, and another one is positive social perception. We need to know each indirect effect, right, separately. Okay, for this one, we need to go to specific indirect effect. When we click on a specific indirect effect, now we can see two different paths, right? We can see two different paths. Go to confidence interval. These two paths, one is 0.043, another one is 0.095. And both are significant because between lower level and upper level of CI, there is no zero, right? So these two mediation are significant mediation. But when we want to compare these two effects, we can see positive economic perception has a stronger effect, or positive perception play stronger role compared to social perception. So the effect of indirect effect of community attachment and support through economic perception is about more than two times of social effect, social perception, right? So both are significant, but economic perception play a stronger role for transferring effect of community attachments to support for tourism development. So this is very good to interpret the result and for your discussion. If we see effect of direct effect, okay, direct effect community attachment on support, right? Direct effect is not significant. Direct effect is not significant. So it means all effect of community attachment to support for tourism development go through mediators. Part of effect go through economic perception, and part of effect goes to social perception, right? Okay. Right. Is it clear? Any question for assessment of mediator?
Sir, I have a question.
Yes.
When you were talking about the 5% and the 95%, the upper level and the lower level, you
Mhm.
said it can't be zero. Does that mean
Zero should not fall in this range. So zero should not be between lower and upper level of CI.
okay, so that means the lower level shouldn't be negative values, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, understood. Thank you, sir.
Okay, any other question?
Hello, Professor. I have a question. Because just now, when you include another mediator, and then the community attachment to the support for tourism is insignificant. So when I report my result, because doing the hypothesis, maybe I say, community attachment have a impact on support for tourism. Because I included two mediators, and then this relationship seems insignificant. So how I report my result?
Yes, it's a very good question. When we hypothesize the relationship between IV and DV, we need to be very careful what we want to test. If you have a few pad between IV and DV, but you hypothesize effect of IV on DV in general, total, so you have to report total effect. If effect of IV on DV, direct effect is important for you, and you want to test direct effect, in your hypothesis also you need to mention direct effect of community attachment on support for tourism development. So in hypothesis development and in testing hypothesis, you need to be mindful what you are testing. You are testing direct effect or you are testing total effect. In case of your example, you are testing total effect, not direct effect. If you hypothesize effect of community attachment on community attachment and positive effect on support, and regardless of this effect is direct, indirect, or combination of direct and indirect, you have to report total effect, right? If you don't have any mediator, if you remove all this mediator, right, automatically this effect will be total effect. Automatically this effect will be okay, let me run analysis. So here community attachment and support is significant, right? Is significant now because you don't have any mediator for this relationship, right? So this is total effect. Or if you include mediator and your hypothesis is to, if you include mediator, but your hypothesis is effect of community attachment on support, not direct or indirect, so you have to report total effect. Okay, let me run bootstrapping again here. Okay, here also you can see total effect. Okay, click on total effect. Community attachment on support. This is total effect of community attachment on support after including all mediator. But, and this is very significant, and the effect is 0.143, right? So you have to report this one for your hypothesis testing if you refer to total effect. But and your hypothesis effect of IV on the. But if direct effect is important, and you want to see how many percent or how much of your effect go through direct effect go through a wide, through a direct path. So you have to report direct effect, and actually for this one is not significant. Clear?
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yes.
Okay, no problem. Okay, any other question?
Doctor, I tried to do the same models with yours. I tried to apply it directly in my smart PLS, but the thing is, when I run the bootstrapping, I don't see on the total direct effect as you have shown to us earlier, because on my result,
What version? What version do you use?
3.
No,
3
I know.
point-
Student, you don't use student version.
No, I don't use. This is a professional version
Okay.
as well.
So professional version, you have to be able to see
Yes.
total indirect effect and the specific indirect effect.
Yes, it's there, but the thing that is not there is I can see the total indirect effects, but when I enlarge, there is, because the arrows is from like in your example is like you can like can you show me, like for this one earlier you shown us there is like community attachment to positive perceptions and then to support for tourism. But when I run it myself, there's only like community attachment to positive perceptions and community attachment to support for tourism only. Like there is no
because you don't have effect of positive perception on support for tourism development, right?
I drew it already, but there is the writing is only like the positive economic perception to support for tourism only. Can you please to show us the total indirect effects again, doctor?
Total indirect effect here.
Yes, in
This
here
one.
when you enlarge the writings, like yeah, you enlarge it again, please.
Enlarge where?
I mean like here the writings there exactly there, yeah. Like you have community, this one, community attachment support for tourism, is that all? Or
Yes,
you
because
just delete?
no, because this is total indirect effect. So here only we can see indirect effect, not path coefficient or direct effect.
Ah.
So it means community there is a mediator or indirect effect for community attachment and support, and this is total one. But based on our model, we know this total indirect effect go through 2 different paths, right? Economic and social. So to see specific indirect effect for these 2 paths, we need to click here in this part. So here we can see different paths through economic perception and through social perception. And these 2 accumulation of these 2 is one is 0.043 and one is 0.095. So should be 0.138, right? When we look at total indirect effect is 0.138.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mustafa. I got it.
Okay, no problem. Okay, if you have no more question, let me go to moderation. Briefly explain also about moderation. Okay, you can see my slide, right? Yes?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, please.
Okay. For moderation hypothesis, actually, moderation refer to some situation that we have difference between effect of IV on DV, effect of IV on DV based on level of our moderator. Means when we introduce moderator for a relationship, we believe effect of IV on DV can be changed, significantly can be changed based on changing our moderator. For example, for moderator, we have gender as our moderator. It doesn't mean that IV influenced gender and gender influenced DV, right? It doesn't mean. So this is not the meaning of moderator. This is different with mediator, right? For moderator, when we have gender, male and female, and two levels of moderator, it means effect of, when we introduce gender as moderator, means effect of IV, effect of attitude on behavioral intention is changed, significantly changed for male and female. Significantly changed for male and female. Or, for example, if we have for the effect of IV attitude on behavioral intention, our mediator is generation. So we have data from two different generations, generation Z and generation Y. So we believe if we hypothesize generation as moderator, we believe effect of attitude on behavioral intention is changed significantly for and between generation Y and generation Z, right? So this is the meaning of mediator, sorry, the meaning of moderator, right? So relationship between IV, independent variable and dependent variables change significantly based on the level of, based on moderator, right? Okay, let me write a graph for you. Okay. For example, here is effect of attitude on behavioral intention, right? Okay. When you test effect of attitude on behavioral intention, you can see the effect is very close to pad coefficient. You know, for this regression line, this slope always show a pad coefficient, right? So for this slope, you can see this relationship is not significant. Means this slope is very close to zero. For example, is 0.0507. This slope, right? So effect of attitude on behavioral intention is not significant based on your result, right? But when so this is the effect of total effect of attitude on behavioral intention. Okay. When we split our data to two groups for male and female, we can see the effect of attitude on behavioral intention for male. This is male, and this is effect or for female. So we can see these two effects are when we combine these two effects, we have this line. So the effect is not significant, right? But the effect of attitude on behavioral intention is positive for male, and for example, is slightly negative for female. So these two, we can see significant difference between these two effects. But when we combine these two effects, means combine our data for two groups, here we can get this result, and non-significant effect of attitude on behavioral intention. So here we can see gender has significant moderation role So for two levels of the gender, the effect of attitude on behavioral intention can be different. This can be also continuous variable, always. The concept of moderation doesn't matter we discuss about categorical variable like gender or continuous variable like involvement. Okay, let's change this concept to and go for our original and main example. Here is the community attachment, right? And here is support for tourism development. So we can see community attachment on support for tourism development. This is the path coefficient for this effect, right? But we introduce involvement in community development or tourism as moderator. So we have people that involve heavily in the process of tourism development, or people that don't involve in this process. So we have these two type of people, right? Or we have different level of involvement in tourism development in community. When we introduce moderator as when we introduce involvement as moderator, so for high level of involvement, we can see the effect of community attachment is very high for those who involve heavily. But for people with low involvement, we can see the effect is weaker. So for high involvement, the effect is stronger. So these two effects for involvement, we can see difference between effect of community attachment on support or a resident with high level of involvement and resident with low level of involvement. But when we combine, when we remove moderator, okay, the effect will be this one, because this effect include both who involve and who are not involved in the process of tourism development in the community. So moderator refer to these two paths. Moderator, when we introduce moderator, means effect of IV on DV significantly is different for different level of moderator, or when moderator is changing. So this is the concept of moderator. Okay, any question? Okay, for moderator, you can refer to this paper as I introduced to you for hypothesis development and also for moderator assessment. For hypothesis development, again, similar to mediator, you need to have theory to support difference, between IV and DV when you introduce moderator. For example, if gender is your moderator, if involvement is your moderator, so you have you need to justify effect of community attachment on support for tourism development moderate by involvement, or is better to say the effect of community attachment on support for tourism development is stronger for residents who involve more in the process of tourism development, right? Also, you can say moderates by involvement, but when you say moderates, means you have two-tail hypothesis. If you have support from theory and the literature, it's better to hypothesize in one tail. You write your moderation hypothesis, one tail hypothesis, right? So it's better to say effect of the IV on DV is stronger or weaker based on level of moderate. Okay. For moderator, we have actually two different approaches for assessment of moderator. If you look at this paper, we explain when we need to and when we can choose one of these approach. We have interaction effect approach that most of times is used for continuous variable, and also we have multi-group analysis. But these two are two different approaches for testing moderator. The concept of moderator for both are exactly same. Even when we apply interaction effect, concept and understanding is same. But for continuous variable, we use interaction effect, and for categorical variables, we can use MGA. But for categorical variable with only two categories, like gender, like if we have age for generation, but only we have two groups. Also, we can apply interaction effect. It's possible to apply interaction effect. But for categorical also, we can apply MGA. Even for continuous variable, if you decide to apply MGA, is possible, but it's not common. Multi-group analysis. For interaction effect, we have different approach for interaction effect. I'm not going through these different approaches for interaction effect. These approaches have some advantages and disadvantages, and in a smart PLS, you can select what approach you want, but two-stage approach can be one of the best that can work in different situation. But also you can apply orthogonalizing approach. You can select in when you use smart PLS. Okay, this formula to show, this is a diagram that actually I already explained what we mean for moderation and interpretation of moderation. We can calculate effect size for assessment of moderation, but it's not critical. Only if interaction effect is significant, you can conclude that the moderation is significant. For multi-group analysis, we compare pad for two groups, and based on comparison of pad for two groups, we can conclude that for interaction effect should be only significant. But for multi-group analysis, we have two different paths, B1 and B2, right? For the effect of IV to DV. We have B1 and B2. B1 and B2 are for two different categories of our moderator. For example, for gender, B1 is for male and B2 is for female. Or B1 is high level of involvement, B2 is for low level of involvement. Generation Y, generation Z. So we split data to two groups, and we calculate B1 and B2 for these two groups, and then we calculate significance of difference between B1 and B2. Actually, all this it's done by software. Just I am explaining to understand rationale behind this multi-group analysis, MGA. There are different approaches for this comparison. So to calculate significance of B1 minus B2, right? So we have permutation test, we have parametric test, and we have another non-parametric test that is developed by Hensler. All these tests are available for MGA in Smart PLS, but the most common one is and most conservative one that are non-parametric are permutation test and also Hensler MGA. So you can see these two tests, or PLS MGA. You can see these two tests in Smart PLS. But before, okay, this formula for this, but before testing MGA, because before performing as MGA, you need to check measurement invariance testing. You need to test measurement invariance. Your measurement model for these two groups that we divide should be invariant, should not be variant, should not be different, right? And this is requirement for performing MGA. Without this measurement invariance testing, you cannot go for MGA. There are different methods for invariance testing, measurement invariance testing. One is metric invariance, but in PLS, this paper actually, they propose a measurement invariance for composite model, and we call this one MECOM, measurement invariance for composite. And this includes 3 steps. We need to check 3 steps in MECOM and measurement invariance. One is configural invariance, means both data for both groups and model for both groups should follow same algorithm and same procedure. So indicator should be same for 2 groups. We need to use the same methods for treating data if we want to, if we do some handling missing value, outlier, or standardization. So we have to, the method should be identical, and also algorithm that we apply for assessment of inner model and outer model should be similar. So we call this one configural invariance. When we use the PLS, actually we don't need to check this one, because for PLS, both groups are treated with same algorithm, unless we have different result for assessment of measurement model for these 2 groups, and we have different indicators or items. We cannot run MGA for a model with the 2 data set or 2 groups with the different items. For example, for attitude, we have originally we have 5 items, but when we assess measurement model for group 1, only we can keep 3 items, for group 2, 4 items. Actually, based on this, we cannot run MGA, right? So first step is configural invariance. Second step is compositional invariance. So correlation between correlation between construct, score of construct in 2 steps should be very close. So correlation should be close to 1. So we call this one compositional invariance. And also for performing MGA, we need these 2, at least these 2 steps. We need at least these 2 steps. So we need to meet the configural invariance and compositional invariance, so we can run MGA. But if we want to combine data of 2 groups, we need to have full measurement invariance. That full measurement invariance come from testing equal mean and equal variance. So this step 3 is for combination of data, but is not requirement for performing MGA. after 2 steps, we can have partial measurement invariance, but if we have equal mean and the variance, we can have full measurement invariance, and we can combine, or we can also call pool data. Pool data means we put all the data from 2 groups together. This is some example. I have several papers that use MGA especially, and MGA, NICOM, and reported based on reported the result using PLS. So you can refer to those papers, and also you can watch my YouTube channel. I discuss in detail all these steps and also show in software, but unfortunately we don't have time to go through software, and I show you interaction effect and NGA in software. Any question? For moderation analysis?
Excuse me, Professor, may I see the slides for the reference articles that you recommend for moderator, to analysis moderator? Because the last slide, you do not show the reference articles. May I see that slides, please?
You want to see or you want to have?
I want to see the slides, and that I can take picture, then I can find article.
Yes, yes, sure.
Thank you, thank you.
But these references actually refer to references for whole slide, and this is a slide for PLS. So here you have, where you can see.
If we have them, but we cannot find it. But we
Okay,
have
I will share this slide, this PDF with the CHDR, and CHDR can share with you.
Oh,
So
thank you.
I will send this PDF to CHDR to share with you.
Thank you so much, Professor.
No problem. So any more question? Sorry, we don't have the time to go through software for moderation hypothesis. But if you have any question after watching video and reading paper, you can reach to me, and you can send email to me and ask your question if you have any. Okay. Thank you. Sharon, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Said, for such a great presentation. Okay, as Dr. Said mentioned earlier, he will provide me with his YouTube link and also the slide. I will share through the email later. Thank you everyone for participating in this session. If you don't have any question, I think I will just end the session. Okay, thank you, Dr. Said. Thank you everyone for participating in the session.